PickFu is a self-service consumer research platform that anyone can use to get fast, reliable feedback from real people. You don't need to be a market research expert or hire one to use PickFu. All you need to do is create a poll, choose your target audience, and in minutes, you're going to start getting results. Real written responses from your target audience. You can ask for feedback on just about anything related to your business, marketing material, product designs, product packaging, almost anything. The respondents submit written comments with every PickFu poll. And now you can use the coupon code NOT101, that's NOT101, for a free 15-person poll at pickfu.com, pickfu.com.
Welcome to Business Law 101, a podcast that explores the uncommon side of business, goes beyond the conventional teachings, delves into the practical, real-world strategies and insights from successful founders, entrepreneurs, industry experts that understand what drives growth and how to achieve success in an ever-changing business landscape. So join us, and let's go beyond the basics. Hi, John. Welcome to Business Law 101. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us here. Let's jump into it. Give us a quick overview of your book and who you are.
Well, let me start with the book. It's called The Stripped Down Guide to Content Marketing. And the title very much indicates what it is. It's very nuts and bolts about content marketing, blogging, podcasting, ways to promote your content, how to tell stories. The list goes on and on. But it's very informative in terms of, it kind of gives you a well-rounded look at content marketing and how to incorporate it into your business. And then
really
as for me, I have a journalism background originally and have been in content marketing since 2010. Not anything that I had intended to do, but I really enjoy it. And now I do a lot of freelance writing, mostly in the personal finance space.
That's really interesting. So how did you go from journalism to the personal financing blogging space or I guess writing about personal financing? What brought you there?
Well, I had freelanced for a while and decided I wanted to go back into full-time work with a company. And it just so happened that there was an opening at a brand that operated an insurance vertical, and they wanted somebody to come in and kind of herd the cattle, so to speak, in terms of creating the content, promoting the content, and those sorts of things.
Okay. And how did that lead you to writing a book? Was there a aha
Well,
moment saying,
it's the book I wish I had when I started out. So back in 2010, there wasn't a lot out there about content marketing necessarily. It's been around for a long time, but the problem was it was something that was evolving at that time, and it still is evolving, but it was really an area where there wasn't a ton of information out there, and I didn't know what content marketing was. So this is kind of a book that I would have liked to have had when I got started in content marketing, giving me an idea of, what's search engine optimization and how do you promote content and how do you create content and how do you need to schedule it and how often do you need to publish and all sorts of things that run through your mind when you're beginning in a content marketing role and you have never done anything like that before.
yeah, that's great. It's sort of a how-to book on content marketing.
Exactly.
So this sort of leads me to my next question. Is there a specific demographic type of business owners or founders or startups that you're aiming with your book to, really get them to say, hey, this is a book for you guys?
Well, I always look at it as folks who maybe are more independent. So that could be a startup, that could be a realtor, that could be a lawyer, that could be an accountant, somebody who maybe doesn't have the machinery in place to do content marketing and just needs some guidance about how to go about it.
Yeah, so like a freelancer, a startup, a small business, little home business. Yeah, that's really interesting. What were some of the roadblocks you hit writing this book? Was it all from your past experience, or did you have to sort of do a lot of research and look up some information that you didn't even know? you
It
should
was
know?
a mix of things. It was a mix of personal experience, but also getting some grounding in specifics about search engine optimization, because I realized that I'm not an expert in search engine optimization. So I reached out to an expert to get a little bit more insight into search engine optimization, SEO. And so it's a lot like what I would have done, let's say, if I wrote a personal column about something going on in my life, but I needed to supplement it with research, facts, figures, things that I may not have been keenly aware of.
Okay, that's great. And what is the one thing you want the readers to really take away from your book? If you can say, I'm going to focus on this part of my book, what is it and why?
I think the overarching message is it's content marketing is not impossible for anybody to do. Yes, there are challenges. There are resources, both monetary and human resources, that you need to have in order to successfully do content marketing. But it's possible. And I've done it on a shoestring budget. I've done it on a pretty nice budget, and I've done it with no budget. So it's possible to do it if you don't have monetary resources and you don't have a lot of people to lean on to do it.
That's interesting. Do you have like a chapter or a part of the book you'd like to read us just to give us a sort of a taste of your book?
Well, each chapter ends with something called stripping it down. And it's basically little nuggets that kind of summarize each chapter. So I am looking, what chapter number is this? Let's see. Chapter 1. So at the end of chapter 1, we have this is kind of an entree into content marketing. So it gives some really good overviews of content marketing. Adopt a scrappy mindset. You can create high quality, impactful content without a big budget. Money should not be a driving factor. Overcome your fears. If you don't possess the skills that you need to execute your content marketing strategy, learn them. Keep in mind that you don't need to be an expert at a skill. You simply must do it well. Number 3, get comfortable with failure. Not every piece of content you produce will be a winner. Learn from the experience and move on quickly. Number 4, repeat what works. You'll likely stumble upon a formula that consistently delivers. Stick to that formula. Don't deviate from it. And number 5, prepare for success. The success of a piece of content may wildly exceed your expectations. Be ready to seize upon opportunities to capitalize on that success.
Those are great points. And so the structure, when you were writing this book and you created the structure, is there a particular reason you wanted to do the recap at the end? Is that part of almost like a self-training? You're hoping that the readers go and read your content of your book and then do the self-training at the end of each chapter? Is that the reason how you built it?
Yeah, I mean, it's much like writing a speech. When you give a speech, you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them what you just told them. So at the end of each chapter, it gives a recap of basically what was sprinkled throughout that chapter and the highlights. And it was something actually that my writing coach had recommended that we do. And, I hadn't even thought of that, but I liked the way that it worked out because it gives you those rich snippets of information, those summaries, those takeaways that can reinforce what you've just read.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's sort of taking that 2 minutes at the end and just giving the key points and the recapping are really important to learning the content of inside, like certainly an educational or how-to book. So one question I like to ask everybody, if you could leave yourself a message, a voicemail of your past self before you started to write this book, what would it be and why?
Specifically about the book or just about anything?
It could be about anything, but around the book, I would assume it's the sort of what you have done differently, or you would say, hey, before you even started this adventure way years ago, what would you leave yourself to say, oh, don't do this or do this?
I would almost leave sort of a pep talk and say, I've seen the future and you can do this, that it can be done. It can be very daunting to write a book and just think about all the work that is ahead of you in order to make that happen. And a lot of people have ideas for books, but don't execute on them because they have imposter syndrome. They don't think they can do it. They worry about not having enough time to do it. All sorts of excuses that we have not to write a book. And I think it's just helpful for me to have left that message to say, you've got this, you can do it, and it's all going to work out.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of people actually say this. They give themselves a pep talk to not give up, to go full in. And I think that's a great point. Certainly, when writing a book, I've never written a book myself, but every author that comes on this show has said that at the beginning, it's sort of like it's the struggle, making sure that they feel they are worthy to write a book. It's like they're not sure they are, and they want to believe they are. And I think that takes away, or it takes some time to get over. So that's brilliant.
Well, and I
Uh,
do think you also need to have that message on repeat, because it's not just a struggle at the beginning, it's a struggle all the way through, because it's very easy to procrastinate, which I admit I did. And because you fear failure. Writers fear failure in many cases, and a great way to try to mask that, try to avoid that is to put it off. And in the end, that doesn't serve you very well, but that's just kind of how we're wired.
That's a great point. How do you stay productive as a writer? Do you set yourself up a time block, or are you just whenever you have 5 minutes? I'm assuming that you did this alongside your day job where you were still working, that you only could find certain times between family, friends, and events and work to write this book. So how do you stay productive?
Well, in the case of the book, I had a writing coach who held me accountable. So that helped a lot. And there were deadlines that were built in that weren't set in stone, but there were deadlines that needed to be met. And in terms of my regular work as a writer, I have a spreadsheet that where I keep track of all the things I'm working on, what when the deadlines are, who the client is, and at the end of the day, if I don't get those things done, I don't get money, and I need money to pay the bills.
It's very motivational. I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah, so true though. So true.
I don't want to
Staying
be
focused.
homeless.
Yeah. But I think it's something all solo entrepreneurs or freelancers or people who work for themselves struggle with is time management, because it's too easy to fall into the trap of I'll just do the things I want to do and then get stuck, rushing through to get the things we have to do.
Well,
And
and
even,
one way I tackle that is I know myself well enough to know that if I worked from home all the time, I would be too tempted to see what's on TV or actually do laundry or, oh, I need to clean out my bedroom. Anything to avoid doing the work. So practically every day during the week, I go to a coffee shop and work from there. And then I'm around other people and I'm not isolated, and I just put my nose down, my head down, and do the work.
yeah, that's great. I also would use co-working spaces myself when I feel
Right.
like I have something to really concentrate on. It sort of forces me because I'm paying for the space, that I feel like, okay, I better make it productive. But otherwise at home, that's so true. You end up walking the dog, you end up doing a million things to procrastinate, to avoid things you don't want to do. So that's brilliant. What is one strength, now talking about this, that you feel writers need to be a good writer?
Wow. I've never thought about that before. I think part of it is just curiosity. And by that, I mean, paying attention to what's going on around you, but also just being curious in terms of what else out there is to read. What can you read that can help you improve your craft?
So always staying focused and reading a lot. Yeah, that's great. That's great. If my next question is a fun question, is if you could meet any entrepreneur or business owner to pick their brain for an hour to write about either their business or themselves, who would it be and why?
I had a few names rattling around in my head when you initially told me you were going to ask that question. And I just settled on one. I think it's Warren Buffett. He just fascinates me, and he's been extraordinarily successful and has followed a mantra, a pattern that has served him well for decades. One of his big things is invest in what you know or what you use, which I think is a great piece of advice. Don't invest in something that's foreign to you that you don't understand. And he's just he still lives in the same house he's lived in since the 1960s that he bought for nothing practically. He lives a very modest life. He's not flashy. And we've all seen the entrepreneurs out there who are flashy. There are documentaries and biopics and all sorts of things that tell those stories. But he just seems like a very wise person who is very down to earth and doesn't, doesn't believe in BSing people.
Yeah, he's a unique character. I agree, and I've watched a lot of videos of him giving presentations and sort of Q&A sessions, almost like he enjoys those the most, the fireside chats. And he is very down to earth, and he does speak the truth, and he's honest about the fact that his business and his growth has been because when he started, at what age, and at the right time, and how the whole market has changed. So, very fascinating person to put in there and to have a conversation. So yeah, I love that. My next question I ask everybody, and again, I ask the founders, business owners, and also the book authors. What is one book, business related or nonfiction, that you've read that had a positive impact on your career and on your life?
Well, let me go to a book that I am almost done reading that I have found really entertaining. And oftentimes I end up reading things that aren't so entertaining because they're for work. And there's a lot of good life lessons in it. Colin Jost is one of the writers and does the Weekend Update segment, co-hosts it on Saturday Night Live. And his book is called A Very Punchable Face. And it's funny, but there's a lot of wisdom in there that isn't, in your face kind of wisdom, but it's, and there was one whole chapter that he devoted to his mother, who was very high up in the New York Fire Department in the medical part. I think she was the chief medical officer, and she was there on 9/11. So it was a very harrowing tale of everything she went through. And you think, oh, this is just going to be a laugh a minute book. And that was a very sober chapter, but, it was very inspiring to learn about what his mother did and has done in her career and all the respect that she's gained. And also it was very instructful to know that Colin, who is very well known, in fact, I think he's either on a tour or about ready to do a comedy tour, has been through plenty of ups and downs and was not the class clown necessarily, and wasn't the popular kid in school. And it was interesting to see he's made it. He is married to Scarlett Johansson now. So I don't think he ever imagined he'd be married to such a famous person. And he's really made something for himself. And he talks a lot about where he grew up on Staten Island, and I think kind of marvels at what he's been able to accomplish as a kid from Staten Island who has now catapulted into having these packed comedy tours, these venues that with people paying perhaps hundreds of dollars to see him. He occupies a 15-minute chunk of time on a very popular TV show. So, it was just very, very interesting. And I didn't know a ton about him. You learn a little bit about him when you watch the show, but I highly recommend it because it's very entertaining, but it's also got a lot of meat to it.
That's really interesting. We're going to add that to the show notes for people to check out. So that's a great description. I love it. My closing question: how can people come out and reach out to you and connect with you?
Well, LinkedIn is one great way. I'm on there a lot. It's John J. Egan is my handle, I guess you could say. And then I also have a website, johnegan.net. And that's where you can find out more information about my book. You can also search for the book on Amazon.
Perfect. And we're going to be adding all those in the show notes as well. John, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Business Line 101 today. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much.
Business Line 101 is hosted and written by me, Olivier Bousset, and produced and edited by our talented podcast team. To listen to Business Line 101, you'll find us on all your favorite podcast apps, as well as YouTube. We hope you've enjoyed this interview and it's given you some valuable insights and helped you along your business journey. And if you have any comments or questions, please reach out to us. Thank you for joining us and listening to this episode of Business Line 101. A pitch deck in 60 seconds. We want to thank our sponsors, Pitch 2.0, a fully automated pitch creation and monitoring system, so you can focus on your product and not on the deck. You'll find them at pitch2.0.com.